Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to another edition of 3 o'clock with SOC. We're so glad that you're here with us. Let me take a second to welcome our Spanish-speaking neighbors and get them on the conference call for Spanish interpretation. Buenas tardes, muchísimas gracias por estar aquí con nosotros en otro 3 en punto con SOC. Como siempre, ustedes pueden escuchar el foro comunitario en español a través de una llamada de conferencia y el número aparece aquí en la pantalla. Y el número que hay que marcar es 646-749-3122 y la contraseña para entrar después es 779-328-221. Y recuerden que siempre pueden ver los videos de los foros comunitarios en nuestra página de Facebook y también nuestra página de YouTube después del foro en vivo. O sea, siempre subimos una copia de los videos después si no pueden estar con nosotros a las 3 en punto. So now I'm just going to pass it to Marlene, who's going to be our lovely moderator for the day, and I will be with you a little later. Hey, Marlene.
Hello, hola, and salam, or marhaba. Those are two different ways that you can say hello in Arabic. So I'd like to first start off by saying welcome back to 3 o'clock with SOC, and we're glad that you're watching us today. The staff of SOC and our platforms are always available to you. If you call and need any resources, we are here to help you. You can call at 414-672-8090 or email us at that email, soc@socmilwaukee.org. That being said, I'd like everyone to try and fill out our SOC survey. Our SOC survey helps us try to better understand what topics and discussions you would like to hear and you would like SOC and our forum to cover for our daily updates for you. So just let us know what topics you feel you would like us to talk more about. So that being said, I want to also reiterate that all of SOC staff is working virtually from home. So I'm currently at my house in the living room. And that is why you see us on screen and we're not currently wearing masks. If we were around each other and we were working in the office, of course, we would be wearing masks. Just a quick disclaimer for everyone that SOC is not... Our disclaimer for SOC is that we are, the views and opinions shared today do not necessarily reflect those of SOC. So I just wanted to give you guys that information and that our views completely do not fall under anything that is said by the guests. So now for our critical update, I would like to introduce Tammy Rivera, our executive director, who's going to give you some updates for today, and she's going to introduce our guest for today, which is Dr. Deborah Blanks. So Tammy, take it away.
Thank you, Marlene, and thank you for moderating. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure you all appreciate seeing different faces and different voices. I am going to keep the critical updates brief because we have such incredible guests today. I was going to give you an update on how the Fire and Police Commission special meeting went yesterday, where we launched co-creating community-oriented policing. We'll do that tomorrow in order to give enough time for Dr. Blanks to do her presentation, and also our other special guest, Deputy Director Claire Evers. Please know that we have a great day for you tomorrow as well. Dr. Rob Smith, the chair of the County Human Rights Commission, also the director of the Marquette University Urban Research Outreach and Teaching Department Center will be here. And he's going to be talking about reconciliation with all this racial justice victory. Really, we're making some progress here, having people's voices heard, and police brutality. How can we get to the other side? And he's going to look at that based on the South African model of reconciliation. Dr. Blanks, Deborah Blanks is here with us, and I'm so excited. We have a special program for you. I want to invite her as I introduce her so we can get on with this important segment. Hola, Dr. Blanks.
Hi, how are you?
We're spending a lot of time together lately, which is, I think, a good sign.
Oh, I do too, definitely.
Folks, we're going to be discussing with Dr. Blank. She's going to be doing a presentation for us on the legacy of John Lewis. And I know that you all are aware of his recent passing, and it really brought to heart how we need to treasure those who have gone before, but how it's so connected to the present. And we're going to go ahead because I want to extend as much time as possible to you, Dr. Blanks.
Thank you, appreciate it.
So we can go ahead with your presentation.
Okay, well, I have to say I'm very appreciative of the opportunity to talk about John Lewis and the legacy he's left us, really. So when we start this, I really want to talk about the legacy of John Lewis and our quest for racial justice. So if we could start the slides, that would be fantastic. So the next slide shows John Lewis, and most of us know that he died recently and his funeral has taken place today. I grew up in Raleigh, North Carolina. And I lived on St. Augustine's College campus as a little kid because my mother and father had gone from the north to the south to attend St. Augustine's College, which is in Raleigh. And then my father started working there as a coach and professor. Well, across the city was Shaw University, where many young African Americans were starting a group called SNCC, Students Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And John Lewis and others came to work in that effort. As a child, I remember running to the fence that surrounded St. Augustine's College, watching the college students, because I was about 8 years old and they were 19 or 20. They looked like they were these big folks, these big giants with their picket signs, getting ready to march downtown to picket. I'm sure that they met up with John Lewis, Shaw University, St. Augustine's College, the two Black universities in the city came together, and to think of John Lewis being a part of that effort. But it didn't stop there. So if we look at the next slide, what it shows is why we started marching, why people became invested. It was because of segregation. It was because of race riots and lynchings and mob violence and the right or the not having the right to vote, all of those things. But it didn't start just with John Lewis. It started in slavery. It started in Reconstruction. It started in lynchings of young African Americans and at times some Latinos as well, lynched because of who we were, because of the color of our skin, or because we didn't look enough like mainstream America. And so we dealt with a segregated society, and that was the cause for which John Lewis marched and protested. The next slide is interesting though, and we women can recognize this, that John Lewis took his inspiration from Rosa Parks and the Montgomery bus boycott, the idea of Black women and women of color rising up and saying, we are going to boycott until we feel like we are treated with respect. And so oftentimes we don't realize we stand on the shoulders of others. And John Lewis stood on the shoulders of Rosa Parks and the many people in Montgomery, Alabama, who decided to stage the bus boycott. Now, the next slide reminds me of John Lewis when he was young, when he was perhaps at Shaw University or on another African-American campus in the South, coming together with other like-minded people to figure out how do we take our protests to the next level. And so it wasn't just in Raleigh, North Carolina, it was also in Greensboro, North Carolina. As the next slide suggests, Black students took up this cause and they started protesting at Woolworth's drugstore and other drugstores and pharmacies and places where they offered lunch counters to their customers. What they didn't do, though, is offer lunch counters and the ability to sit down and eat to people of color. And so while the students here may seem to be smiling, the next slide will show that those smiles turned to fear as they were accosted for sitting, trying to simply eat at a lunch counter. And so again, John Lewis's legacy is about standing up and sometimes sitting down to claim your rights, to protest, to march, to really strive for racial equality and justice. So the next slide suggests that it wasn't just about the students, though. It was about everybody who loved freedom. And so many people came together to protest, to march. The next slide will show that here is John Lewis being beaten. We've heard about him marching across the Edmund Pettus Bridge and how he was beaten and knocked unconscious. He was one of many. And so our legacy is that even though we don't know it, we don't know what our destinies are. We don't know. I mean, many of his friends probably didn't realize how great in stature John Lewis would become because of his inner strength and ability to withstand the blows, to be beaten but not broken. And so the next slide will talk about the fact or show the fact that you see this coming together of John Lewis, this maturing and understanding that he would not let others define who he is or who he was. For instance, the police might have considered him as a criminal because yes, he was arrested, but he felt in his heart that he was doing what he needed to do to help overcome. So this idea of getting into good trouble when necessary for the mighty cause. Ta-Nehisi Coates talks about the narrative of this country argues against the truth of who you are. And so John Lewis didn't accept that stereotypical view of a Black man being a criminal. He turned that around and identified himself as a person getting in good trouble for a mighty cause. The next slide will talk about the fact that John Lewis was a part of the Big Six. The Big Six were Martin Luther King, James Farmer, Roy Wilkins, A. Philip Randolph, Whitney Young. Those were the people who were recognized in the 1960s as the leaders of the movement. Now, we have to tell you, Dorothy Heights, who was the leader of the National Council of Negro Women, she inserted herself into that Big Six. She wasn't going to let it be just a boys' club, a Black men's club. And so this group was recognized as the leaders of the movement. Now, Lewis was much younger, but he carried himself in a way that made him take a rightful position in the Big Six. Next slide. Here's what I believe is his legacy. It's the legacy of someone who has endured, someone who has recognized that we're all in this together, that no matter what our race or our sexuality, our gender, our age, no matter what religion or region we might live in, we're all in this together, and what we do impacts each other. And so the next slide really talks to the idea of connecting the past, where John Lewis started with the present, and the future. Martin Luther King and others marched and protested for civil rights then, but it's connected to the movements that are going on now, whether it's Black Lives Matter or other protests for human rights and racial justice. We're all connected. The next slide connects with the fact that we're not asking for anything glorious. We're not asking for people of color to receive $1 million or $100,000. We're asking for things like our young men being able to walk down the streets or drive down the streets without worrying about being killed based from the police or others. We're asking for health insurance. We're asking for equal pay and equal rights. So the things that we are marching and striving for are basic human rights. The next slide is important to me because I want to make sure people understand. I know it's not just about Black folks. You know, oftentimes we talk about the history of Blacks and the struggles of Blacks, but it's all of us. It's the immigrants, it's the dreamers. The next slide. Without dreamers, there is no American dream. And so part of John Lewis's legacy was that understanding that we're all in this together, that no one is better or worse than anyone else, that we have to come together. And he reached across the aisle and across race and across economic status to make sure that he was in the fight with everyone. Next slide. And so we understand that it's immigration, it's DACA, it's also standing up for children and parents who are trying to come here and live a quality life. Whether we agree with their quest or not, I believe all of us would agree that the way people are being treated is inhumane and unfair, and that we all should have the opportunity to live with respect and dignity. But I would say that these issues that impact people of color, whether it's Black, whether it's Latinx, whether it's Asian, Native American, these are issues that impact us all. Next slide. And so John Lewis showed how a person could come in to the forefront of the nation as a protester, as a person convicted of crime, considered and stereotyped as an outsider, and at the end of his life have taken a step into Congress, a total insider in so many ways, but one who never forgot where he came from or what the cause was or the importance of the cause, not just to him, but to people of color and Americans everywhere. Next slide. And so what John Lewis left us with was a lot of power, the power in understanding that no matter who we are, we have a role to play. We may not always protest, we may do something else, but we all can contribute. No matter who we are, we can contribute to achieving racial justice. And he said, do not get lost in a sea of despair. Be hopeful, be optimistic. Our struggle is not the struggle of a day, a week, a month, or a year. It is the struggle of a lifetime. Never, ever be afraid to make some noise and get in trouble, necessary trouble. Now, it's interesting when we look at that there is so much now that we could be depressed about. When we look at the virus, when we look at how people that are protesting or people who are taking a knee are identified as troublemakers or identified as less than or as identified in negative ways. But what John Lewis said is we can't give up. We always have to be hopeful. Our struggle is not the struggle of something that's going to happen instantly, but it's a struggle that we have to commit to for a lifetime, and that we can't be afraid to make noise. We can't be afraid to step out of mainstream norms and step up for making good and necessary trouble. And the next slide. It's interesting how humble I've heard people talk about John Lewis in terms of him being humble. But he was a man who rose up, stepped up to the call of duty, was recognized by President Obama in many ways. And to see these strong people, along with Michelle Obama and others, walking the path toward trying to achieve justice and freedom for all of us is something I think is amazing. Next slide. So the question I think that John Lewis definitely wants to leave with us is, if not us, then who? If not now, then when? When I look back at John Lewis's life, to me, it suggests a man who didn't know where he was going when he started out, didn't know the powerful leader he would become, but stood up based on his inner strength, based on a belief of equality, based on a belief that we have to work with each other humbly but forcefully. And so I would suggest that all of us could take a moment perhaps and just think about, where do we fit into this? How do we contribute? Because if it's not us, then who will take that burden up? Who will carry that torch? And if we don't do it now, then when do we do it? I think for me, it's been a pleasure to talk about this. And I have to say to Tammy, I think your organization carries that torch.
Thank you. We really try to be present and supportive of residents' voices, and we are those resident voices, right? Because we're all here. And it never seems like enough. And I really love your point about Congressman Lewis's humbleness. I don't know that anybody in a moment understands the impact that they're having when they show courage. And it's not until they look back, or even others look back and see the significance of that. And so that's a really important statement, because for those who are getting water for the protesters, for those who are making sure they get masks, for those who are protesting, for those who have done it every day, for those who have done it one time, for those who have been arrested or tear gassed or show up at a hearing, like, it's all part of the movement. I tell the youth and my staff this all the time, and sometimes I'm sure it sounds corny, but we don't understand how important our contributions are in the moment. And I always tell them, looking back, because sometimes the work is heavy, and people don't realize, like, 90% of the work is not romantic frontline demonstrating. It's not. It's doing HR, it's paying the bills, it's writing posts for Facebook, like all of that stuff, planning. 90% of it is not the romantic 10% that inspires us. But I tell them, one day you'll look back and you'll say, I was making calls to make sure people had COVID resources, and I distributed, dropped off contactless masks. It's like all those pieces. I submitted a hearing. I saw that hearing firsthand. And so that is something that you shared, and that his legacy demonstrates for us, that we just have to lift up, because people don't understand how all of those pieces move human dignity forward and equity forward. Dr. Blanks, let's help folks understand where they could get involved these days. Between the two of us, I'm sure we can list all kinds of efforts. I'll let you start on issues of racial justice in general, and specifically give people some ideas where they can engage. And I'll do the same. I'll jump in, and I think between the two of us, we should be pretty generous in options.
Okay, well, for me, what I think is the best way to start or get involved is to start where you live, your community, your neighborhood. And so sometimes it's good to start small. For instance, in this age of the virus, are there some ways to connect with your neighborhood association? Are there parents? I know some parents who are stressed beyond belief because of their children being at home. As much as they love them, it's a stressful time. And so is there a way to tutor online? Is there a way to connect with an elderly neighbor? Because these are lonely times for people who aren't connecting with their family. So just things like that. If you're connected with a church, are you connecting with others in your church who might feel isolated and alone? So I would say from those things, we can talk more about organizations. But for me, it's about how do we connect person to person, neighbor to neighbor, to help us get through these difficult times.
That's an awesome point because that leaves room for everybody to be involved. Sometimes I think folks are intimidated by the movement activities because they think it's the stuff that gets a lot of visibility, but it's every little action. And so that's a really good point, folks. Doing the smallest, checking on people, providing maybe some presence online, dropping off things without any contact if you know people are going through. Also, for those of you who want to sort of do organizational connection work, of course, you're invited to join SOC. We're doing all of our work virtually. And so please know that if you have a cell phone, a smartphone, or you have a computer, and even if you just have a phone, there's ways that you can help from the very easily accessible things, like just having a cleanup in your neighborhood, you and your family, or you alone, to we can show you how to listen into like city and county meetings and hearings that take testimony from folks. We can teach you how to access that and give your opinions and write comments or e-notes for those. We have a leadership institute at SOC. If you want to get formal training, it's going to be virtual. Just waiting for the funding to clear on that for us for our third season. You can be on a committee. We have a couple of issues that we're tackling: immigration reform, diversion program for women involved in street prostitution, public resources, law enforcement reform, racial and social justice in a global way. There's all kinds of ways. And then also, please know, it's my understanding that our local young folks, headed by Frank Nitti, and I believe Khalil, are still involved, and they are still holding protests every day. And their intent is to do that for quite a long time. And then in the beginning, there's always a lot of people who show up at protest movements, and then it starts waning off. So if you haven't been involved so far, you can if you feel safe, or you can do it by car. So please contact us, and we'll be happy to get you connected. Dr. Blanks and I are working together with the Community Collaborative Commission, now new name, of the City of Milwaukee Common Council, and she's advising us, and I'm a member, and that's a way, that's a whole process of really strengthening, reforming law enforcement for a better public safety for everyone. And that's a way you can get involved. Let me say hello, Dr. Blanks, to our participants and see if we have questions. Folks, I'm going to start saying hi. So if you have some questions, this is the time to ask them. Hola, Trine. Hola, Diana. Charlie, Marianne, Hector. Hector says, count me in. I'd sure like to be more involved and have a representation about my community and institution I work for. Sounds good, Hector. You can either inbox us your contact information so you don't leave it all public at soc@socmilwaukee.org, or you can call us at 672-8090, and we'll follow up with you. Thank you. Appreciate your willingness to serve. All right, folks, if there isn't any questions, Dr. Blanks, this is such a timely day that how things worked out for you to be with us today, for you to lift up the legacy of John Lewis as it is the last day that funerals are being held across the nation for him. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for being with us.
Thank you for having me, and keep up the great work.
You as well. Be safe.
Okay.
All right, folks, I'm going to turn the program back to Marlene, who's moderating.
Hello. Okay, so now we're going to go over our coronavirus update. So as I have been doing every day for the past 3 weeks, I would love everyone to challenge themselves to wear a mask and take a selfie and post it on their social media platforms. This is the mask up challenge that I'm talking about. So wear your mask, take a selfie, put it up on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and tag 3 of your closest friends or family members and put hashtag mask up. What we're trying to do is we're trying to get everyone to wear their masks and wear their masks properly everywhere they go, indoors and outdoors in public spaces. So try to wear your mask as often as you can. Try to practice wearing it at home for like 5-6 minutes while doing the dishes. So then that way you can get used to wearing it and you'll really forget about the fact that you're even wearing a mask. It's a behavior change that we need to try to get accustomed to. So that being said, I would like to introduce our guest for today. Her name is Claire Evers, and she is the Deputy Commissioner of Environmental Health at the Milwaukee Health Department. Hello, Claire.
Hi, thanks for having me today.
Yeah, of course. We always love your updates. So for our first topic that we're going to be discussing is if you have any COVID-19 updates for us regarding numbers, death rates, anything like that.
Yeah, so today is Thursday, so we do update our data and our dashboard every Thursday at about 2 o'clock, so this is a really good time. I have the fresh updates to give to you all today. So right now we're actually looking in a little bit of a better direction. So our percent positivity rate is 9.2, which is down from 10%, which it's still pretty high. It's nothing to celebrate really, but it's actually a good thing. We want to see that positivity rate under 5%, but we have seen a reduction, which is great. So we're at about 9.2%. Our gating criteria are those 5 criteria: the cases, the testing, the care, safety, and tracing. They have maintained, which is good. So our cases are in the yellow, our testing is in green, which is the best it can be. Our care is in the green, again, the best it can be. And then our safety and tracing are both in the yellow, and those are criteria that are defined by the county, and then the whole Milwaukee County is included in that. Today, during the 2 o'clock press briefing, one of the health officers from one of the county, from Greenfield, issued the data for the Milwaukee County. And he painted a little bit of a darker picture for the county, stating that the county is seeing higher numbers of COVID. Their decreases are less. Their decreases are less than that in the city of Milwaukee. And so, again, we're seeing a bit of a positive change in the city of Milwaukee. And then I'm just going to pull up here something, just 1 second. Okay, so when we look at our COVID data, so our African American population has been impacted heavily in comparison to other populations, making up 32.9% of total cases of COVID in the city of Milwaukee. I'm really sorry. I'm going to have to handle that or she's not going to stop screaming. So if you could just give me 1 second.
So, we're gonna go ahead and play our census video for you guys for today, and then we'll come back with Claire Evers. So, let's just...
You know that park you wish you had and those potholes you want fixed in your street? It takes money to build and fix these, and Washington, D.C. decides who gets it through census numbers. So starting in March, participate in the census. You can do it online, phone it in, or over the mail. And nobody else will have access to your information. Everyone should take the census, even if you're undocumented. For more information, go to WeCountCensus.com.
All right, let's now play our further promo, which is our daily survey for today, so everyone can complete that.
Has this live forum been informative and useful to you? What part of the forum could be improved or changed to make it better? Please take a quick survey that's located in the comments section so that we can keep 3 o'clock with SOC going for residents. Thank you for tuning in.
All right, and you know, it's all right. We all have kids, we all have siblings. We know how it can be working from home, and everybody completely understands.
Thank you. I'm so sorry. She's a strong-willed child, and she was not going to give up. She's putting on her Spider-Man costume and needed help getting it on. I mean, that is a priority. So,
I love that. You know, empowerment to her for wearing a Spider-Man costume.
Yep. Yeah, so I'm sorry. So I can just kind of pick up. I was talking about the COVID data as we stand today. So we know that it's infectious and it affects all areas of the city. Right now, our metrics are remaining stable. So I mentioned the percent positive rate has gone down slightly. We are lower than 10%, which is a good thing. Our African-American population has been impacted heavily in comparison to other populations. So it's making up about 32.9% of the total cases in the city of Milwaukee. African-Americans are currently 1.7 times more likely to contract COVID-19 than non-Hispanic whites. So this demonstrates a significant racial inequity and a need for increased outreach, which we are working on in the city. So the zip code that has had the most cases of COVID is on the south side. It's zip code 53215, which has a total of 2,769 confirmed cases. And then 53204 has the second highest number of cases, which neighbors that 53215 zip code with a total of 1,868 cases. When we talk about the Hispanic population, it has been the most heavily impacted by COVID since it was first observed in the city of Milwaukee. So the cases among the Hispanic population accounts for 35.8% of all confirmed cases in the city, and is now starting to decrease. So we are seeing maybe some of our mitigation plans and our protective measures working. So this population has been the most heavily impacted by COVID. And there's a total of 4,771 confirmed cases among the Hispanic population, which has now seen more cases than the African-American population. So I believe I do have some death rate data here. We do see that individuals 65 and older is the most vulnerable age group. And the majority of our cases have been among the working age group of 24 to 34 with 22.5% of the cases. And it is important when we see that age group when we talk about schools reopening, because a lot of that age group are parents. And so when we see kids starting going back to school, and we know that the adults in that age group are the most impacted right now, we kind of see that being a double risk there. I'm just checking my notes from today. So yeah, the 9.2 positivity rate was kind of the highlight of the day. If we look at Milwaukee County, there's a total of 19,027 cases in Milwaukee County.
Wow, that was a lot of information. That was really useful. I love how you brought up the point that, you know, that age group that is like up to 29 years old, they are individuals that have children, and their children will be going to school when, you know, if schools reopen and everyone goes back, and then that's just going to cause an increase of, you know, virus and like an increase in cases for the virus. So that's a very good point. So we are, so far, MPS is going virtual.
Right.
But there are other schools that are outside of the Milwaukee County that are reopening again, and they are having students come back to school. So that's also a risk, and when you take that, it's a risk to take when dealing with that. So then that means there's a population that will be isolating themselves, and then there's a population that won't. So then that can conflict with each other. So is there any, has there been like a reevaluation right now, maybe to move forward, or are we at a standstill with phase 4? Based on the data?
I'm not sure if you can hear me. My camera seems to have gone out. Okay, there we go. Good. So we are working on Order 4.1 to address a couple things, and it's supposed to be issued, we're hoping for tomorrow. One thing we needed to align with was our mask ordinance, which wasn't in Order 4. So we are aligning our Order 4.1 with our mask ordinance. And additionally, we needed to address the school closures, because in our order, schools were not permitted to be in person at all. So right now we put a process in place that schools may reopen in person if they have an approved plan with the city of Milwaukee. And that's both K through 12 schools, public, private, and secondary education, either as a trade school or university. So we're individually reading each of the school plans. We're hoping to get more guidance from the state on what the schools are expected to do if they have a positive case. Because right now, 2 or more cases at a school would, within a 14-day period, would equal an outbreak. So does that mean the entire school has to close? Does that mean everyone who rode the same bus as that student now has to quarantine? So there's a lot of things that need to be considered. We are not allowing any schools to open full force at 100% capacity. So DHS and DPI came out with really good guidance for school leaders to determine how to go back to school. And they had hybrid models. So there may be an A-B pods type thing where part of the school would go in person Monday to Tuesday, and then no one on Wednesday would be a cleaning day, and then virtual Thursday, Friday. Things similar to that. We understand every family has to make decisions that are good for them. Some children do okay virtual learning, some need that in person. Some families have high risk health issues that they can't take the risks, so they have to be virtual. So we're really trying to look at all those different aspects to figure out how schools can reopen safely.
Well, thank you for that information. Would you like to give us an update on Governor Evers' mandate to the state to wear masks?
Yeah, so Governor Evers did issue another executive, like an emergency order. So that's similar to the order that was issued before the Safer at Home. So that gives him the authority to issue things like a statewide mask mandate. And so they do have a very detailed facts and questions on their website. I just want to highlight a couple. I know we do have our mask ordinance in the city of Milwaukee, which is a little bit stricter than the state one, mainly regarding outdoors. So people do still have to follow the city of Milwaukee one, but the state one is very, very similar. So it's saying that, face covers should be worn whenever you're indoors or in an enclosed space other than at a private residence. So we've gotten a lot of questions since the city mask mandate. Does that include me going to my office at work where it's not open to the public, but you may be around your coworkers? And the mask requirements are such that you do need to wear the mask if you are even at work where the public can't come, but you do have coworkers around. Face coverings should be worn anytime another person who is not a member of your household or living unit is present in the same room or enclosed space. So really what we're saying is anytime that you are around other people that you don't live with, it's safest to wear a mask. You're protecting yourself and you're protecting those around you. It does say that face coverings are strongly recommended in all other settings, including outdoors when it's not possible to maintain physical distancing. So that is the difference between the state order and the city order. The city order mandates that masks must be worn when you cannot be 6 feet apart. And then face coverings should be worn by anyone over the age of 5 years old who does not have a medical condition, disability, or other sensory sensitivities that prevent it. And our order is aligned with CDC, which is age of 3. So those are the couple differences I just wanted to point out, and then just make it clear that the city order is the one that the city of Milwaukee residents would need to be following, or anyone visiting the city of Milwaukee.
Okay. Yeah. That makes complete sense in regards to, wearing your masks at all times in public or even at work, just because you are exposed to individuals on a daily basis, it does not mean that it's safe to not wear a mask around them.
Right.
So that being said, I have a story from one of our community members that was shared, and I'd like to kind of read it out to you, and then you can kind of give us an outlook on like your idea of what should be done through a public health perspective.
Sure.
Yeah. So this happened at a hair salon. So a small location. The business owner had COVID-19 information from the CDC hung on the business windows. She expressed a lot of confusion about symptoms and protective measures for COVID-19. She has been affected by the pandemic since she was not able to work under the safer at-home order. And now that the business is open, this is the owner, she had lost clients because of her request to use a mask inside her salon. She was emotionally affected by the situation where clients turned aggressive when she asks them to wear a mask, or and they would ask her who she is, or you're not a doctor, I don't care about the virus. The business owner asked to receive face masks to be able to offer their clients these face masks to enter her location. So the issue here is, how can a business owner, a small home business owner, try to initiate that they want individuals that come into their small business to wear a mask? And how can she try to move forward with that in regards to the mask ordinance?
Sure. So this has come up before, so I'm hoping that this information I'll provide is helpful. So in regards to getting masks to provide to customers, she could try to reach out to Visit MKE. I know that they had a large supply of masks that they donated, and so that could be a possibility. And there are probably other community organizations that have them available. But as far as customers getting aggressive, we never want someone to be put in a situation where they feel threatened. So we don't recommend that anyone is challenging somebody who, like a customer who comes in and who is being aggressive. We've seen it nationwide when things turn really ugly, and we would never want a business owner or an employee to feel threatened by that. Our recommendation is to let the customer know, have signage to know that it's clear what is expected. Have reservations if possible. If you have to allow walk-ins, or if you have reservations, make sure they understand your policies ahead of time. Salons and spas, I'm almost positive, are also required to have like a medical check, or like a sign-off saying that you don't have any symptoms of COVID. So that would also be a good way for them to have the conversation about what they're requiring, and just let them know masks are required if you want to have a service here. And if they know that ahead of time, I think that helps. So then if there is a person who is a non-believer and does not want to wear a mask, they can find, well, not in Wisconsin anymore, but they can find somewhere else to go to a salon. But if it's in the moment, we don't want people to put themselves at risk. And I would, if I were the owner, I would ask them to leave if possible. If it got escalated to a certain degree, you would have to call in for police, but that's the last resort. You wouldn't want to have to do that. You just try to want to use your interpersonal communication skills and try to diffuse the situation, and hopefully just ask them to leave and say, I would like to earn your business when we don't require masks again, or, something to that manner. But yeah, we really don't want people to be in a tricky situation.
Right. Well, thank you for sharing that information. A lot of the times, our business owners, small business owners, and those that do go to these small businesses are not really aware of the implications that come with, having different perspectives and views when it comes to wearing masks. And I think it's important that you shared that information coming from you, from the public health department, so then individuals know, like, you should wear a mask when you are going to a small business. It's not only for your protection, but it's also for the people around you. Even if you don't believe in the virus, it's It's to take precautions.
Right. Well, and if that customer is not wearing the mask, they're not hurting themselves. They're hurting that owner. And so it's really for that owner's own protection to ask them to leave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Claire. We love having you on as always.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we'd love to meet your daughter one day.
I was going to say next time the Spider-Man costume was only half on, so I really couldn't have her come on the screen. But next time, I'm sure she'll come on.
Definitely. Yeah. We'd love to see her. All right. Thank you. All right, so that was really great. We got a lot of information from Claire on the mask ordinance. We got a lot of information on data. We got a lot of information that the African American population is being heavily affected by COVID-19 right now in regards to death rates, and that the cases are primarily in those that are 20 to 29 years old. So please be careful. Do not congregate with one another. We found out that, Governor Evers is having a mask mandate. So that means everyone should be wearing their mask all over the state, not just in Milwaukee. And we know that, you should be wearing your mask whenever you're going to small businesses, in respect to yourself, those around you, and the owner that you're going to be seeing. So now we're going to move on to our reminders and anything coming up for the week. So tomorrow we are having Dr. Rob Smith come on, and he's going to go over reconciliation. This week has been all about racial justice. We covered lots of topics for this week regarding racial justice. We covered internalized racism. We covered racism in general. We built a foundation about racism, and we hope that we helped you better understand what racism really means, and discrimination and colorism within the United States and in Milwaukee. So tomorrow we are going to talk to Dr. Rob Smith, and then we will see you all tomorrow. And we like to also just have some solidarity with protesters and families. And we have lots of thoughts and prayers with those impacted by COVID-19, especially those that have been affected by illness and death. And then we will now play our thank yous for today. But enjoy your day. It's really nice outside, so go for a walk. Thank you.
Thank you to our sponsor, Wisconsin Boys, Community Development Block Grant, Neo Philanthropy State Infrastructure Fund, Movement Board Project, Catholic Campaign for Human Development, Silver Foundation, City of Milwaukee Office of Violence Prevention, Thai Foundation, City of Milwaukee Promised Son, all the faithful individuals who support SAC through the personal donation. Thank you, thank you, thank you.